Before this story ends, you'll understand why a single moment can change an entire life. And if stories like this touch your heart, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Untold True Stories, because the support you give today helps us share more real, emotional stories that inspire hope tomorrow. Everyone in the restaurant noticed him the moment he walked in. Not because he was loud or flashy, but because he carried the quiet confidence of someone who owned the world without needing to prove it. His suit was simple but perfectly tailored, his watch understated yet clearly expensive. People whispered before anyone even knew his name. The hostess smiled nervously as she led him to a corner table, the kind usually reserved for special guests. No one knew that this man, known in business magazines as a ruthless billionaire investor, was about to change the life of a woman who was barely surviving. Maria wiped her hands on her apron and took a deep breath before approaching the table. She was tired in a way that sleep never fixed. Her morning had started before sunrise, packing a lunch for her 8-year-old son, Evan, then rushing him to school before catching the bus to the diner. She worked double shifts whenever she could, not because she wanted to, but because rent, school fees, and groceries didn't wait for dreams. Her smile was practiced, warm, and hiding exhaustion she couldn't afford to show. She greeted the man politely, taking his order. He barely looked up, his eyes focused on his phone, responding with short, clipped words. She nodded, used to customers like him. Wealthy, distracted, often impatient. Still, she did her job carefully. When she brought his food, she checked back just enough to be professional without being annoying. He ate quietly, efficiently, as if every minute had a price tag. Around them, the diner buzzed with ordinary life. Couples chatted, a family argued softly over pancakes, a truck driver laughed too loudly at his own joke. Maria moved between tables, refilling coffee, collecting plates, counting tips in her head before they even hit the table. Tips mattered. They decided whether she could buy fresh fruit instead of canned, whether she could pay the electricity bill on time or beg for an extension. When the man finished, he placed his fork and knife neatly on the plate and stood up without a word. Maria approached to clear the table, already bracing herself. Wealthy men like him were unpredictable. Some tipped generously, others treated tips like an insult. She glanced down at the receipt, and her heart sank. Tip, $0. Not even $1. Not even loose change. For a brief second, anger flared in her chest. Not loud, not dramatic, but heavy. She thought of Evan's worn-out shoes, the hole in the sole she kept gluing back together. She thought of the note from school asking for a small fee for a field trip she still hadn't paid. She swallowed hard. Getting upset wouldn't change anything. As she reached to lift the plate, she noticed something unusual underneath it. A folded napkin, thicker than normal. She paused, her fingers trembling slightly as she picked it up. At first, she thought it might be a note, maybe an apology or a complaint. When she unfolded it, her breath caught in her throat. Inside was a handwritten message and a check. The check amount made her dizzy. It was more money than she made in an entire year. Her knees weakened, and she had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. The message was written in careful, deliberate handwriting. It said that he had watched her work all evening, noticed the way she treated every customer with patience and kindness, even when they didn't deserve it. It said he knew what it was like to be underestimated, to struggle silently while the world assumed you were invisible. The $0 tip wasn't cruelty, the note explained. It was a test of character. And she had passed without even knowing she was being tested. Maria felt tears blur her vision. Around her, the diner continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. No one knew that her life had just cracked open in a way she couldn't yet understand. She stood there for several minutes before her manager noticed something was wrong. When she showed him the check, his mouth fell open. He offered to call the police, thinking it was a mistake or some kind of joke. Maria shook her head. The check was real. The signature was unmistakable. The man was already gone. That night, Maria barely slept. She stared at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. Part of her was afraid. Afraid to believe it, afraid it could disappear if she trusted it too much. The next day, she went to the bank with shaking hands. When the teller confirmed the funds were valid, Maria broke down crying right there at the counter. The money didn't magically fix everything overnight, but it changed what was possible. She paid off her overdue bills. She bought Evan new shoes and watched his face light up in a way she would never forget. She enrolled in evening classes she had once abandoned because she couldn't afford them. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future instead of just surviving the present. Weeks later, she received an email. It was from the billionaire. He explained more about why he did what he did. He told her that success had made people fake, greedy, and careless around him. He had grown tired of giving money to people who felt entitled to it. He wanted to give it to someone who didn't expect anything at all. He also offered her a job. Not as a waitress, but as a coordinator in one of his companies, handling community outreach programs. He said he needed people who understood real struggle, not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Maria hesitated. She was afraid of stepping into a world she didn't belong to. But then she looked at Evan, doing his homework at the kitchen table, and she said yes. The transition wasn't easy. She felt out of place at first, surrounded by people in suits speaking in terms she didn't understand. But she learned quickly. She asked questions. She worked hard, just like she always had. And slowly, she realized that her life experience was her strength, not her weakness. Years later, Maria stood on a stage at a charity event, telling her story to a room full of people. She talked about that night, the $0 tip, the napkin, the moment everything changed. She talked about kindness, dignity, and how the smallest actions can ripple outward in ways we can't predict. She ended her speech by saying that real wealth isn't measured by what you keep, but by what you give when no one is watching. Somewhere in the audience, a single mother wiped away tears. A waiter stood a little taller. A wealthy man reconsidered how he treated the people who served him. And if this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you to look twice at the people around you, please like this video and subscribe to Untold True Stories. Because you never know which story, or which moment, might change everything.